Yeah.
So I used to damage people. Yeah, I used to damage.
So you was an enforcer. So
I was an enforcer.
Jamaicans would call you if someone weren't acting right. You would go around with your baseball bat and lick off kneecaps.
Yeah, well, more than that,
whatever you've been charged for.
Yeah. So, for instance, it was easier for them to just give me the money, or something. So, broken jawbones or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of level of violence. But I think what happened was, why I'm saying we self-destructed, was we stopped fighting the police. And I think that was the biggest mistake of our lives, because we then began to fight each other over the drugs trade. And I think that's where I think it went really bad.
And it all started, what?
I think what you call today, that's where it started, the self-destructive nature, which was, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe was caused by the Jamaicans. Even though I'm a Jamaican myself, but I think... Indirectly, they caused it because they came with this new idea of making money, which was crack cocaine. But we moved away from the social...
From the cause.
The cause into this criminality behaviour, even though... Some of us were. I wasn't a drug dealer. Nothing like that. I wouldn't even know nothing about selling drugs. I know about smoking.
So how did you feel? How did you feel when they used to call you up to help you to call you up to employ you for jobs?
Man's getting paid. How would you?
But then you still had that thing of I don't really like you, man. Though,
I'll be honest with you.
How was your relationship?
I'll be honest with you. After a few guys that I'd beaten, I began to realise that's not what I signed up for. And basically what happened was, then one of the guys in my crew got a gun, and obviously that kind of turned my head because it gave me more power. You understand? And I think from then it was just downhill for me. I think for me was, I was beginning to dislike it, but then when the gun came on the scene, I loved it more because obviously you're a bad man. Yeah? Yeah. But here's where it went wrong. One by one, each one of the men then got killed. So 9 of my boys all got shot dead. You understand?
What about the one that you grew up with when you were first experienced?
No, me and him survived. Me and Christopher.
Oh,
Christopher. He's in the documentary that I've just made.
Come from Chris.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah. Christopher, he survived. Me and him are survivors, and he's in the documentary as well. And basically, because in them days it weren't no knife, it was all guns, because the Jamaicans brought the guns in. You understand? And like I was saying, you couldn't get guns because, they wouldn't give it to you. But because the Jamaicans come in with this reckless madness behaviour, people were getting guns. So now...
You got to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, so the first generation gang members, which would, what you may call grey gang...
PYG, PDC.
Them and there. Yeah. Not them, but before them, because they're the legacy of that. They got guns. So we got guns. So can you imagine a 15-year-old with a gun back then? Yeah. Now we then began to turn on the Jamaicans because we wanted to make the money. Right. See how the money thing mashed us up.
Yeah. And then so what's his name? I was
listening
to one black guy from South London. Can't remember his name. He was on the James English podcast, and he was talking about when he was fighting against the Jamaicans, and he was he was British black as well. And he started fighting against the Jamaicans and how they mash up everything. Yeah, we began to turn against them because we wanted money, but then that moved us away even more from the cause because money started to get into us. I started earning money. Today you call it Gucci, Versace, but those didn't exist. So in my days, it was Burberry, Akascutum, Lacoste, Slazenger. Those were our name brands.
Slazenger was a brand back then.
Back then, yeah.
That's what's directing now.
Yeah, Slazenger was a brand, big time. Burberry was a big time.
But Kangol.
Kangol wasn't heard of then. Kangol came in after when Def Jam started.
Okay,
when Def Jam came in.
Yeah, I'm hearing
but
Kangol was hard, you know.
Huh?
No, sorry, I was just style. Yeah.
So Kangol's British.
Yeah.
It's British, but everybody thought it was American. It wasn't.
What's his name? Quincy Thwaites.
I know him.
I know Quincy. Quincy Thwaites. He was talking about that time period.
He was a serious.
Right, he said that dad was a serious guy back
Remember.
then, and he kind of took it on from there.
Yeah.
Not about him, but that sort of era.
Yeah.
So like, what was the pressure? What was the tension like between the Jamaicans and the British black people? Because you guys are kind of looking at your Jamaican.
We are looking at each other. We're
But
looking
it's
at
like
ourselves.
it's
Jamaica-
confusing.
It
It's
is.
a standoff.
We were looking at ourselves because they are relatives. Most of them were our relatives. What was happened was the killings. The Jamaicans' killings was out of control. Like literally. So, for instance, okay, I'm going to give you an example. I was in a dance hall. Okay, it was in East London. Okay, 1985. Now, I was a recording artist as well, so I was signed to Island Records. Yeah, no, Jive. So I signed to Jive. I'd not signed to Island yet. I signed to Jive. Okay, so I was on the same record label as KRS-One. Okay, I was also on the same in the music industry with what you won't know them today, but they were famous back then. Nitty Gritty, Super Cat, Red Dragon.
Super Cat.
Yeah,
Right, those people were in the dance with me. You understand? So we were, because back then Badman and music was intertwined. Yeah. So Super Cat,
I think it still is.
he was a Badman,
But done music.
but done music.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's how it was with
You
us.
as well.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Right. Same thing. So basically,
Was there any musicians trying to do Badman on the side?
no, it was you was a Badman first.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah.
Super Cat, myself, we were Badman first. We weren't musicians. Whereas today, it's the other way around. You got rappers or trap and drill artists trying to be a bad man because they're saying this on stuff on record. Whereas Super Cat or myself or others like us, we were bad people before we became anything to do with music. And music was just another way of us earning money.
Yeah,
You understand?
It was
So
hustling.
we was in a dance, and it was a reggae dance hall, and all the well-known DJs from Jamaica were there and everything. So next thing I know, I heard some screaming. 4 gang members with balaclavas bust into the club, spray up the place, and was running in my direction. And the funny thing it was for us because Brixton had, by then our reputation began to get a bit murky because the Jamaicans were linked to us. So anytime something happened, people thought it was Brixton man that did it. You understand? So they came in and I saw them coming towards me, so obviously I froze. You understand? And when they've come to me, I don't know, they most probably where that brother was. They started shooting, but the bullets missed and blew the guy's head off next to me. So the guy who was standing next to me had a hole in his head. And that was the first time I'd seen a hole in the head. I've never, like I'm seeing it, like first time. And that bullet was for me. And that was my turning point. That's when I went to Bernie Grant.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Okay, that's how you met them.
That's how I met Ben, because I wanted out. Because that's when I thought I've got to go to America. Because I never signed up for this. I signed up.
Next, like this is
Yeah.
I'm next.
Is it because like that was that? Remember, 9 of my friends had already been shot dead. They'd already been shot dead. Do you know what I'm saying? So this,
You're looking at it like that's
This is your
that's
time.
just- that's how it ends.
So that's when I realised God had a message for me because how can 4 guys miss you and they're standing in front of you? That's not possible. That's when I realised. That God wanted me alive. You understand? So that's when I decided to look up Bernie Grant and.
That's mad. That's 4 man right there, bro.
And they all missed you. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Now I was trying to put. I always do
He was
that.
trying to
When people tell me
picture
stories, I
before.
put myself in their situation.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's 4 man right there, and I'm right here.
Yeah, and they missed. The bullets missed. But the guy got his head blown off, and that's when I realised,
Rest in peace to that guy.
So,
Of course, man. Respect and love.
you
You
know,
know what I mean?
I've got to get out of this thing.
Yeah.
Because I never signed up. I only signed up to fight police. My whole life was about fighting police.
Snowballs,
I
though,
enjoy
innit?
like the film I'm going to make is going to be showing that because I'm going to show people what I did. Because I even said, I remember one time, I don't know if you heard of London Fields Gang, long before they changed their name to A1, innit? So
London feels like
them man there. I spoke to them man there about 10 years ago. About 60 of them I spoke to them.
When Margs was active. And
Yeah, all them man there. So I
Tricky,
spoke,
all them.
I spoke to all of them. All of them. They were all there. And I said to them, how much police officers have you lot beaten up?
They said 0.
They were like, bruv, you're on a mad thing. What do you mean beat up police officers?
Yeah.
So I said that to them. I said, then, how many white, racist officers have you bombed?
Bombed?
Yeah. So, like, set alight. So I'm like, I'm like, how can you not be gangsters but you haven't even done that?
Yeah. But like you said, the cause has got lost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's what I've done.
Yeah.
I got on a bus from Camberwell, okay, went straight to Eltham, and threw a firebomb straight through their building. That's what I'm saying. That the people don't
That's a
understand.
bus. That's a bus with a bomb.
No,
It's a bottle.
It's a bottle. It's just a bottle thing. It's a bottle.
Yeah, I know, but can you imagine sitting there on the bus? Just
Waiting.
She's ready.
Just
lying there.
each stop is getting by. You know you're gonna do. Your mind is set. You're not changing your
But
mind.
this is what I'm saying to people, that when I talk about being a gangster, that's to me being a gangster. Like I would get on a bus and do it on my own. Like for instance, I remember me and my brethren was like, bruv, we're bored. Like, so today's gang members will sound bored and they're gonna rob somebody that look like them. Yeah. Okay.
Or even a younger
Or
whatever.
You know what I mean?
Civilian.
Me, when we were bored, we said, yeah, did you hear about that pub? It's a racist pub in Lewisham. Yeah. Let's go in there and start a fight. We did that. So two of us will go into a pub, chock a block with white man with look like the looks will kill you. Like,
Yeah.
and when you go in there, everybody stops and they're looking at you. Silence. Proper. You know, like in a film, like they stop. We start a fight. We got beaten up, but we started a fight. That's what I'm talking about.
That makes you tough, though, no?
Yeah. So I grew up. That's what
That self-inflicted pain, though.
Yeah,
Imagine,
bro,
let's go out and get beat up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's like you want to feel whatever's inside you. You want to feel it.
But you know, how we looked at it is that's our life.
Yeah.
You understand?
We're freedom
But
fighters, isn't it?
when you start shooting each other,
Yeah.
That's when your brain.
that's when your brain's getting confused. It's not making sense because, like, what?
Especially
Your whole programming is.
it
you
doesn't
know
make
what it
sense.
is? You know what it is? For people that haven't come from the era or from maybe the things that you've come from, say our generation, they're not thinking like that because they never had the original cause like you did to fight against Babylon, like you say. So now they're fighting against whoever's attacking them. Let's say the youth that never had no gang relations, never had no gang ties. He's not trying to be a bad man. He's just trying to go to school, back and forth, trying to go to his football, whatever, yeah? But he feels like he has to carry something because he's been bullied before, he's been whatever, you know what I mean? He's been attacked. He's doing that because of the attack that's coming towards him. He's not doing it to, you know what I'm saying? Go out and fight them. So obviously you was doing it, I've lost my point.
No, you
have to
with
edit
purpose though. You were doing it with
Yeah,
purpose.
you was doing it against police. Do you know what I mean?
And I think
then that got lost.
Oh, it definitely got lost.
Yeah,
It got so lost to the point where I didn't even know who I was, bro. Because
That's what I was saying, man.
I didn't even know who I was. I was just lost. So bad, like, because.
Did you know anything about mental health like back then?
No, because back then,
Void.
black people didn't talk about. Because remember, we thought mental health was another form of slavery. So in our head, we're like, no. Don't allow the white man to tell you you're mentally ill because they're going to lock you up. That's how we... I mean, don't get me wrong, that's kind of an ignorant overstand. But the point what I was making is in that time period, you couldn't mention mental health. In fact, we didn't even know we had mental health. Remember, I'm a young kid.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm mentally ill. Somebody has to tell me I'm mentally ill. Do you understand? And it wasn't until when...
In those times, mentally ill was that person that was down the road dancing.
Yeah.
So when someone says to
jacket,
you, oh, you're mentally ill, it's like, I'm not like that person.
Yeah.
What do you
I
mean?
feel like it's a trend slightly, this mental, you know what I mean? Because you got 11-year-olds saying, I'm depressed, I've got anxiety. You don't even know what anxiety is.
Put it this way, if you're self-diagnosing yourself, you haven't got it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing, you see.
You have to go and get medically
And
diagnosed.
we didn't want to do that because we didn't want to get sectioned. So, obviously, as time got on and I met Jesse Jackson and them, that's when I began to realise something wasn't quite right in my head. But what happened was, I'll tell you what turned it for me. When Jesse Jackson took me to a crack spot. Now, I don't know if any of you seen New Jack City.
Yeah.
Okay. In New Jack City, you need to watch that. It will show you a big tower block where all the crackheads are. Do you remember that scene? Right. Okay. One of
Chris
those.
Rock was in there looking for drugs with his white lips,
Exactly.
bro.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. In that scene
yeah.
was a replica of Washington DC. Now, in every city, you have 2 miles long of a crack spot. So, for instance, you may go into an area down in East London and you may go into a shubby, which you call a bando, and there's about 5 or 6 guys there. Okay, magnify the bando, 500 houses.
It's an estate.
That's a massive thing.
Right? That, and when I went there, you can smell the smell of stench before you got in. Now, what happened was, he was making a point to me. So when he took me there, we were stepping over
What city was this in?
Washington DC.
Oh, you said yeah.
Yeah, and we were stepping over bodies where the women were lining in their own feces. The babies were blue. Blue babies, and they were supposed to be black. The men would come up to you and says, I want to suck your...
Oh, raw.
Give me $1 so that I can get... And I'm going to be honest with you, it was the most frightening experience I've ever seen. It made when I saw New Jack City years later, it made me realise, oh my God, we're self-destructing here. You will see men in their 50s shaking, frothing, begging to suck so that you can give them money to go and buy the next crack.
So it's real, like it's not an exaggeration in films when they make the crackers look like crackheads.
Listen, I'm going to tell you the
If anything, it's worse.
It made me realise, and this is how he dropped it. This is how Jesse Jackson, you contributed to this.
Yeah.
That's how he dropped it.
Yeah.
He said, that's you.
That's how you know you had a decent man inside you, because certain man might say, so, I'm going to do it again, do you know what I mean?
He said, that's you. And that's when I realised, oh my God, I've moved so far from the cause, we're all killing ourselves and we're all to blame. And you know what he said to me? He said, look, I could have taken crack, but I chose not to. He said, you know what he said to me? He said one day he was a little kid, this is in the 30s, I think the 30s. He looked out his window and he saw a black man with a rope around his neck. He said, how many black men have you seen being lynched in your life? He said, I could have become a gang member, I chose not to. He said, everything we do in life is a choice. He said, it may not appear like a choice, but he said, the choice comes when you become later in teenage. So he said, if at 10 you were doing it, you can be forgiven because you're 10. But he said, if at 14 you're still doing it, you can't be forgiven because you actually do know it's wrong.
That's what you want to do.
And he said to me, no amount of racism was going to get him to kill another black man. And that's when I realised we got it wrong. Like,
because that was happening in London.
Yeah.
So can I push ahead a little bit more? So like, now that you've gone through that with Jesse Jackson, and you've gone to America, you've gone to Washington, and now you've kind of had this revelation where you've had this brainwave of what you're seeing, what's happening at home, and what the end result is going to be, but you've seen it in the future now in America, right? So now we've done that. What sort of organisations have you fallen into now? Talk a little bit about your documentary that you've got coming up, the film. Like, what is it, actually, though, before you go into documentary, tell the people, I don't actually think we've explained, what is it that you now do? We've gone into Sheldon Thomas, right? What is it that now, what you do? Who are you? Like, who is the Sheldon Thomas that everyone knows you for?
well, the Sheldon Thomas came back from America, got a degree in statistics, diploma in economics, diploma in accounts. I have a diploma in business and a diploma in management and a diploma in economics.
Education.
Right? So Jesse Jackson said the way to win the war against racism is to get yourself educated and obviously believe in God as well, okay? And go back and help your people. So when I came back, the first thing I did was went straight to Manchester and spoke to a gang called Gooch Clothes Gang. Look them up when you finish. And that's how I began with what we're doing today, which is my role now is that I go around the country engaging gang members, young and old, black and white, Asian, doesn't matter what colour, to try and save their lives. But what I do is I don't go to them with this idea that don't carry a knife and don't smoke and don't do that. I don't do any of that. Because I realise when you tell young people not to do something, they'll do the opposite, because I did the opposite. So what I tend to do is use psychology. My daughter's a kind of psychologist. And we use a different approach. Our approach is based on what Jesse Jackson did to me, which was we're trying to get young people to look within themselves. We're trying to get young people to understand where the actual problem really lies. The problem isn't so much racism or discrimination against whites or anything. The problem is broken families. And so what we do in Gangs Line today, and which we started before when I first came back from America, was that we're trying to educate parents into understanding the importance of having a real relationship with their kids before they become teenagers. Because when a kid becomes teenager, they want to go and do their own thing. But if you set in place from the age of 2, your child won't become a gang member.
Certain foundations.
Well, my child has never become involved. I've got 4 kids. One who is 33, one is 27, one who's 19, 3 girls who's 19, and a boy who's now going to be 16. None of them ever have joined a gang.
And the 16-year-old boy probably is at the stage now
where
you
join
balls deep.
Yeah.
Already.
Most likely would be.
Already,
but why? What happened?
If he was,
is that me and my wife realised that the best way to avoid gangs is to show them love from the beginning. So my boy ain't gonna want to join a gang because he knows he's gonna hurt my feelings. You understand? Because remember, it's the emotional attachment that is missing within us.
can I stop you there?
Yeah.
I always explain this to people. Yeah, people say to me, now I always say this. I know I'm gonna go eye patch on. I've been stabbed before. Yeah, the cards I was dealt wasn't the best in it. But if we're talking gangs, yeah. The reason why I never joined gangs was because of the respect and love that I had for my dad, specifically my dad, right? And it's because when I was growing up, he used to install things into my head, yeah, where I wanted to be a man like him. Yeah, I used to look at him as this God-man character, yeah? So I used to be like, I want to be a man like my dad. So he used to say to me, son, let me tell you something. I'm like, yeah. He goes, when you go outside and you're with your friends and all that, so yeah, he goes, sometimes they're going to make you want to do certain things. They might tell you certain things and all that sort of stuff. And I need you to understand something, son. I was like, yeah, what's that? He goes, are you a man or a mouse? And he was just looking at me, yeah. And I was staring at him, because this was a moment, yeah, and I was like, I'm a man. I goes, well, there you go then. He goes, men don't follow. Yeah?
Yes,
You don't do none of that. Everything, you make your own decisions, no one tells you nothing. Yeah? You're a man or a mouse. What do you want to be? You asked me, what do you want to be? When I stepped out of that house on that first day, I didn't realise, but in my head, I was like, what do I want to be? So I used to see a group of boys. And I used to start seeing older boys around, all that sort of stuff, right? And I found myself in situations where, like, those of you that are watching this that know me, you can vouch for this, where, like, when I was growing up, I was a popular guy, yeah? So I knew everyone and the girls and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah,
And
cane roll, you gotta remember, and he was tall, so
long hair, tall, all of that, right?
the girls,
Yeah.
I used to come visit him in New when I was a younger one as well.
Yeah, so
So
like,
I
I had
get the
tricks.
older girls.
Yeah. So I had this sort of like reputation, a good reputation, right? But the thing is that my boys grew up differently to me. They didn't have the same upbringing. So when we was around certain boys and the older lot would say, yo, you lot gotta go and do this and this and this. What, you lot pussy? What, you lot boom? What? Well, you man can't be here if you're not putting in work or you're not doing this. I'm like, alright, see you later. Because of in my head, I'm like, you man can't tell me nothing. I'm a man. You know what I'm saying? And I just kept replaying that in my head. I'm a man. You man can't tell me.
You see that, yeah? That I'm not gonna do that because I'm doing me. I never had that in it. Luckily, I had a dream of basketball in it guiding me because I never had a daddy. I didn't grow up with a daddy. Like maybe from like 1 or 2, so I don't know in it what it's like. So luckily, I had a basketball dream to sort of focus on, and to keep me out of it. But you see what you're talking about there, like if the man that were on it or whatever, I'm most probably going. Do you know what I mean? To be real, I was most probably gonna go because that teaching wasn't there. Now, if you ask me now, I'm like that because I've learned stuff throughout life, and I've had certain role models that I look at and I pick things up from certain people.
So was it basketball that kept you focused to not do that?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Luckily, I had that in it. If I didn't have that, I would have been straight down that path.
This is the thing, though. You see, this is what I'm saying. That what you're talking about, which is basketball. Okay, your dad. That's what we're talking about. Is missing. If you look at the average kid, so I'll go into Feltham, Rochester, Brixton Prison, or then prison, right? In Feltham, Rochester, 90% of the inmates are black. Okay, yet 80% of them have no dads. 80.
Listen to that again.
The whole prison.
People need to understand this. This is why when I hear people talk in the black community about they're not talking about absent fathers, then you are in trouble. Because let me tell you something now, yeah? When you speak to those inmates, enough of them, I mean, I'm not saying all of them, but a vast majority haven't got one good thing to say about their dad. Not one. Like you find an inmate will say, don't talk to me about my dad. I'm going to bust him up when I see him. The next one, when I see him, I'm going to bore him up. Next one, I'm going to poke him. And what I'm saying to people, we can't grow a society where so much young men and women grow up with no fathers whatsoever, to the point where they're going to jail. So what I'm saying is this, when to talk about what changed, what work you're doing now, the work I do now is to educate parents. I'm doing a webinar next week for parents to teach them how to get involved with your kids. Don't wait for them to become a teenager. See, my kids have grown better than me. They don't smoke drugs. Can you imagine in 2021 your kid don't even smoke skunk?
Crazy. What if your son now, 16
It's not gonna lie, it's crazy. Yeah.
What if he come to you and said, Dad, like I've tried a spliff, I want to smoke weed?
That's not a problem. I'm gonna tell you why. I'm not dumb to realise to tell my kid don't smoke. Listen, we're in a world where drugs are going to be tried. Yeah, that's the world we're in. I'm not in a world of the world I want, which is no drugs. I'm not in that world. So I have to realise, if my boy comes to me now and said, yeah man, I tried a spliff and that, I'll be like, okay, so this is what will happen, son. When I was smoking, there was no THC levels. Why? Because we didn't smoke skunk. We smoked weed. Weed was naturally grown. So when it's naturally grown in the Caribbean or Africa or Afghanistan, there were no THC levels, or it's very low.
It's got the right amount for the body to approach. Yeah.
Exactly. But when you smoke skunk, it's chemically made, because in England there is no sunlight. So everything they do has to use blue lights, and they have to use chemicals to make it grow. So the chemicals in the skunk is what matches up your brain. So I'll say this to my boy.
Especially developing brain as well.
Yeah. So I'll say this to my boy. I'll say, listen, if you smoke skunk, this is likely going to be the outcome, which is, one, if you smoke skunk for more than 2 years, you're going to begin to lose your memory. If you smoke skunk for more than 3 years, your brain cells will begin to damage. If you smoke skunk for more than 4 years, you're more likely to get psychosis. If you start smoking it and keep smoking it after 5 years, then you're going to not only have psychosis, you're going to be open to all mental health problems. Now, you see, when I'm explaining it to him, I haven't told him to stop smoking yet, have I?
Yeah, but you're putting him off.
But I'm putting him off. Right? But you know what? That's not an issue for me, because I'm not dumb. Kids are going to try stuff.
But I feel like your approach, you're allowing them to make an adult decision.
Yeah.
Because they already feel like adults as teenagers. So your approach, you're making them feel like an adult by giving them the information.
It helps.
And then go, do with that what you want.
Yeah.
That's exactly what my dad did. What man do you want to be? He never said to me, you are going to be this man when you leave this house.
But having said that, I think what you're saying, you're doing a webinar, I think that's needed, because a lot of parents, like even me, say I was to have a kid, I wouldn't know how to direct them in the right direction. I would say this, you know what I'm saying, don't do this, be your own, like you say, don't follow anyone, but then how do you enforce that every single day?
Simple. This is what I'm saying. In my webinar, this is what I teach them. It's not about enforcing. Number one, if any of you have